Hey, we are live.
Hello, we are live. Sweet.
It's season 1. No, it's season 3.
Wow.
Your playlist is messed up.
Episode 1, season 3. There we go.
Wow.
I was just looking at the episode 1 and it went season 1.
Season 3, episode 1 of the Musty Wargamers. Hey, everybody. So we have got Rusty from Hellcrex here, my cohort as usual, and we have Curtis from Dash of Elan joining us tonight as well.
Yay. How you doing, guys?
And then, of course, myself. Heresy Productions, ... or just Palmer.
I didn't say, Curtis, you brought a whole army with you. We feel outnumbered.
Yeah, I know. Camera seems to be angled right on my guys there. Where's my face?
It's up.
I can't find it. Oh, there we are. We're getting close. Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
I'm in here somewhere.
So,
Hey.
yeah, so we do have a cool topic for later tonight, but we thought that we'd start the evening off with just seeing what everybody has been up to lately, as far as what they've been painting, what they've been up to. We've got a little bit of an announcement for a challenge later, maybe after that, and just have a little bit of sort of free discussion before we get into our topic. Maybe introduce those of us who've had their musty drinks. We can introduce our musty drinks as well. What do you say, Curtis? Do you want to kick off and just talk about what you're painting there, what you've been up to and things?
Yeah, I was just working on these in the chat I was just in.
Cool.
I finally got the 63rd, I believe it's the 63rd foot, based. And I haven't touched these guys in about a week and a half since my last paint and chat because I've been totally out of sync with my schedule. So tonight I, to help get in the practice mode because I got a big show with these guys called the Musty Wargamers. I decided to do a little chat, earlier this evening and get these guys based. So
Sweet.
That's what I accomplished. I'm pretty happy I got this done. Next step, of course, will be to texture the bases with some spackle and that kind of thing, and then flock the bases. And finally, to finish them off, flags. I'll apply the flags last.
Yeah.
And then they're done.
Sweet. Do you have a sort of tea or water or sort of some kind of beverage to accompany you this evening?
Yeah, it's called coffee.
There you go. Nice.
Coffee.
What kind of coffee are you drinking?
Black with 2 creams and 1 sugar.
Nice.
No flavorings. Usually I like a nice velvet French flavor to my coffee, but not this evening. It's a little bit late for coffee to begin with, so I don't want to get too full of flavor here.
How is what are your plans for painting after this project? Do you have other things in the wings? Is this a commission for you, this one?
Well, it's for Forge and Brush, so it's going to be sold.
Yes. Yeah.
And these sell pretty quick, AWI in 28 mil. Quite popular thing for me to paint. But I usually have about 3 or 4 projects going at the same time, one of which is my own project for my own collections, and the rest are Forge and Brush. In this case, these guys here are one. I'm almost done with them. The second project is some Old Glory 28 millimeter militia for the American War of Independence. And they're about 75% done. And what else do I have? I have my own personal project currently is 4 bases worth of 15 millimeter Gauls for my Ancients armies. I'm working on them. Just got to start on them. And I'm looking to add one more project. I'm not sure what it is, but something else for Forge and Brush. I'm still looking around what else I could work on next. So again, that's going to be a surprise. I mentioned that in the last paint and chat. It's going to be a surprise.
Cool. So before we kick over to Rusty, I just was going to ask you, Curtis, Rusty put a test message in there, since this is our first time using StreamYard as for the group chat, and he'd said hello, and there it is. It's popped up, and there's Striker as well. That was my question. So I guess there's a little bit of a delay. But
Yeah, about a minute delay, I think.
Hello there, Hellcrex 26, and then there is Striker. Hiya.
Hi, Bill. Long time no talk to.
Sweet. I like that. This is really cool. That it seems this is much better than our last setup. We can see these as a lot better while we're talking. So that's great. So awesome. So Rusty, what have you been painting? What are you planning on painting? What is your musty drink tonight? There you go.
All right. Get this. Let's like narrow it down here. Extinction event from Confluence Brewing, the old standby from down the road.
Nice.
This is made with Bravo, Citra, and Simcoe hops. And it smells really good. When I crack this thing open, and it just smells, there's like potpourri of citrus smells coming out of it.
Nice.
So mighty tasty.
It's like Christmas time.
Yes. All right. I've been working on lately, working on my Mechanicum forces, as you can see here.
Yes.
If you can probably go full screen with me for a second.
Oh, yeah. Let me do that. I got to get schooled on this a little bit there. There
we go. All right. That's my Mechanicum. This is like a Land Raider type thing. It's a Forge World macro macronid or something like that. Macro Carnid. It's a battle taxi. It's basically like a Land Raider for 40K, if you know about that. And I just finished these guys up today. And you can see this. They're number 1.
Yes.
They're number 2.
Yep.
And then there's number 3.
That's cool. I really like those.
So,
they're really nice. Don't drop them.
yeah, being resin, they break.
That's right.
But you can see. There we go.
Yeah, they really came out nice. That's a good job.
Not that it's focusing very well on them, but they even have, I sent you the picture, you can see the crackle base on those things. That stuff that GW puts out works really good if you like a cracked earth.
It's like a Martian something, right? Like Martian earth or something?
Yeah, Martian iron earth or something.
Yeah.
So that's really good stuff. So I got those 3 done. And so just give you an idea. It's like comparatively hold them together. Like,
oh yeah,
they're pretty big.
They're both quite large. So even next to each other, if you had a little Space Marine around, it'd probably be even better. But or even just one of your other little guys.
Don't have any.
Yeah, Supergirl. She probably dwarf that.
Yeah, Supergirl's a little big.
That's right. Cool. And so what are you what's coming up next for you? Are you thinking about other projects?
Yeah, I have some Ursarax. They are the assault troops for the Mechanicum. I have 6 of them. I just put them together today and got them all. I have to prime them yet, so I ran out of time to prime today. Before it got too dark by the time the glue dried and set. So
cool.
I'll get them done tomorrow. And then I'll start in on those before something else gets started. So
cool.
That's pretty much everything that's on the table at the moment. And I still have a whole bunch of Gen Con loot for Battletech stuff. So if you haven't been following, if you follow me for Battletech, well, there's a lot of it still to come.
Oh boy.
It's one of those things where you got to pace yourself. It's like if you do it all at once, it's like you make everybody like, where's all the Battletech stuff? Trust me, it's just like trickle it in over the course of the next few months.
Well, maybe I will jump in here.
Yep.
Self to the stream. Okay.
There's Curtis.
Here we go. So I got a little fancy tonight since it's the first episode of the season. And I got myself a little bit of, I pulled out Cooper's Choice. So just a Glenrothes 1996 Scotch Sherry finish. This was a gift years ago from my wife to me. So I kind of, it's lasted a long time. But so yeah, just going to sip on this a little bit while we chat.
That's kind of like my Napoleon cognac I got for my wedding present from when I got married. It lasted me probably 20 years.
And so what I've recently painted, you guys may have seen this guy.
Yes.
But this is sort of my dragon.
Yeah, that's a beaut.
It's just it's a Dragon Masters from like the late 80s. And just put it on. I used just basically your pink foam and then put epoxy sculpt around it and just sculpted some like a bit of a stone kind of base just to raise it up off the ground a bit, just so I could get it a little higher with the other monsters that are going to be in the game, like in Saga and stuff. And so it wouldn't be so low to the ground. Really enjoyed that. And as far as I've been actually working, I'm going to in a little bit when we discuss our Musty Wargamers Oldtimer Challenge that's coming up, I'll show what I'm going to do for that. But one of the things that I wanted to kind of get to, but it's kind of partly for that, but I kind of want to get to it sooner than later. So I wanted to do one of these guys, just
the old giant.
Yeah, I have two of these. Like this is one that has horns, and it's a bit more of a chaos looking giant, I think. And I want to use him with my Beastman, like my Chaos Beastman. I have another one that has like the bone jaw, and it looks much more like an Orcs and Goblins kind of look to him, and I'm going to use him and do him later with my Orcs and Goblins. But this will be somebody I'll use. I'm going to kind of paint him up more chaos looking, I think. And so I'd like to work on him next. Whoa, if I don't break him in the process.
Dear God, bummer.
he survived. That was a half-inch drop, but it didn't sound good. And so, yeah, and so the other thing that I've got sitting over here, and I was just thinking about it as we were talking, but I don't think I showed this on the channel yet. But I printed this off with my 3D printer, and maybe I should show it. I'm just going to switch cams real quick.
That's the one you were talking about. The first one you did came out kind of bad.
Yeah. So I've got this guy here, and it's basically a mound of skulls and bones.
Which left over after the dragon got it.
That's right. Like you can actually see femurs and like other thin bones in this, not just skulls, but it's basically a mound of skulls and bones. And I'm basically going to use this for the Sacred Ground piece of terrain in Saga Age of Magic. Basically, they allow each faction to take a specific piece of terrain if you want to that has special rules associated with your faction. So for my goblins, this isn't going to be for my beastmen, but it's going to be for my orcs and goblins. This is just sort of like a conquest spot, where there was just a whole bunch of dead human remains, and I'm just going to use that as like my orcs and goblins little spot. I have a plan for the beastmen one as well. And so I'm going to print another one out, something different for that as well. And so, yeah, I'm going to probably try to work on those in addition to the challenge that we're doing. And so that's kind of pretty much what I've got going on as far as painting. We can actually talk a little bit about gaming too, maybe a bit. For myself, what I've mainly been playing recently is I played a game of Age of Magic, which I really quite liked, my first game of that. And I think I might have talked about it on a video, but that's one of the last games I played. I've mainly been playing Saga and Star Wars Armada recently. Those are the recent games that I've played. And I've been doing more painting than gaming, in all fairness, in just the last few weeks. It was kind of the opposite before that. Sometimes that happens where I just kind of go back and forth, but really enjoyed it. Star Wars Armada's got some new ships coming out. Like it's been like a year since I think they've done a release or something like that for ships for it. And a lot of people were wondering whether it was dead, but they've not only announced that they're expanding it with another starter set or some sort of, they're doing another age of Star Wars with it. And then also they're still adding ships to the current waves. And so we're getting a couple of those. And so it's kind of neat. Some new ships announced. We've played some games recently. Really enjoying it as much as I always have. And Age of Magic was like a really breath of fresh air. I really enjoyed that because I already loved Saga, but then just adding some of the new rules and the new types of units and magic and all of this stuff in has really changed it up quite a bit. And so it's really fun to pull all the fantasy stuff out and play this. It's a lot of fun. So how about you, Curtis? You wanted to talk about any games that you're kind of into recently or games you've played?
Currently, I'm playing GMT's Great Battles of the American Revolution, Battle of Brandywine, and it's a blast. I'm at episode 16. I'm up to turn 9 of 12, the second half of turn 9, and it's a fantastic game. If you love strategy and tactics and a historical battle from history, you can't beat this series. It's fantastic. A perfect
This is a
blend.
board game, right? It's a board game. Yeah.
It's a board game.
I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen the videos for that. Yep.
And it's a perfect balance, I think, of realism, feel, and game playability. You know, it's not an overwhelming game like, oh my God, it's like ASL. There's so much to do. It's a binder full of rules. It's not. And it's like one of those games, rare games, that's perfectly balanced, where you're having a blast, but you feel all this historical realism at the same time. They really did a good job with this game. And I'm really enjoying that. That's about the only thing I've been playing recently, as far as playing games is concerned.
Yeah, today I was over at my local game shop today, and I would just notice that they had that box set on it's a 3 games in one box, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it was like $55, I think it is.
It's not bad. That's not a bad price at all. That's about right.
It's very tempting. The wife wouldn't like me bringing it home, but I was very tempted.
I think it's worth it. I really do. You'll get a lot of enjoyment. It's like I've said before in many discussions about the cost you invest in a board game. And they're expensive. Most board games are like anywhere from 70, 80 or more for this one boxed game. That's a lot. But the thing is, you're investing in something that will give you years, if not a lifetime of fun and enjoyment. And, this is a hobby in a box, essentially.
Yeah.
It's not like you have to invest more and more and more over time. This is all in one box. You're going to get a lifetime of game and fun out of that. So in that respect, it's worth paying the $70 or $80 just for that one box.
That's one thing. In some ways, I kind of regret when I unloaded almost all my board games, is I just wasn't playing them anymore. And I never thought about solo playing with them. It's just one of those things where it's like, just wanted to just figure out, give them a better home for someone else that might find some use for them.
Sounds like me with my miniatures.
Yeah. I was just, let's see, Epic Gold Games for me, starting 40K. Yeah. Yeah, I was just messaging with Stryker tonight. We were talking about his brother is the one that has the Legion of the Damned army he's putting together. And so who knows what that will lead to here in the next few weeks of possibly some 40K games coming across the pipe.
Are they talking about 9th edition already? Is there rumblings of that?
Yes.
I thought I heard that.
And it just seemed like the 8th edition came out, but that's typical GW, where if an edition lasts now 2-3 years, that's a lot.
And so are there any predictions on that? Because they made a big move to make it more like, not like Age of Sigmar, but just kind of, they went into some of the themes that Age of Sigmar did in the game design, right?
Yeah.
And so are there any chance that they're going to be, are they sticking with that, or are they going to kind of incorporate some of the older methods, or what do you think? I
think it's going even more Sigmar.
Oh, okay.
I think they're going to go to, they're both 100% compatible. So remember, Rogue Trader and the Fantasy used to be very compatible with each other. So it went, par for the course. It wouldn't shock me at all if they went that route and just become one complete system, where if you look at the Eye of Terror, where fantasy, one world could be a fantasy world and another one could be, 40K, and then you could have Space Marines landing on one planet, Chaos Marines and stuff, demons, mix it all together.
Right. I think the question would be as to whether you'd want to really, how would you sell 2 games if you could use them both together without any, like at what point do they just become Age of Sigmar in the year
It
40.
just becomes Warhammer. You don't have Warhammer 40K. You don't have. You just have Warhammer. So.
Right. Looks like we have Eric Elder that joined us. Hello, Eric. He says board games have a longer shelf life than computer games. That's definitely true.
Yeah.
And then Striker says par for the course with GW. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, that's my prediction. What's happening with Games Workshop when it comes to 40K, and that it's what they're doing. It just seems like I used to play fantasy, Warhammer Fantasy, and then when they went with the end times type stuff, and it was like, hey, Osterwolf's in. It was yay! It's kind of. This is really cool. Bought all the books and stuff that go with it, and then they go, "Oh, it's done. There's no more fantasy anymore." Look, I just spent all this money, and then they, like an idiot, they did the same thing to 40K, and they had a whole bunch of 7th edition books come out, and we bought it all into that for Space Wolves and Demons and all that, and then they go, "Oh, sorry, it's now 8th edition. None of that matters anymore." So.
You had said offline once that you thought 7th edition was one of your favorite editions to play. I'll be honest with you. Besides the fact that it was a beautiful publication, I thought it was a great game. I mean, I still thought it was good. The only thing I wasn't crazy about was just all the extra stuff that I had to, like all the stuff that came out in the White Dwarf and all the extra like battalions and the kind of battle groups, I think they called them, like all these other things that were outside of the books. A lot of the game kind of went beyond the books, and you had to incorporate the ever-growing like kind of meta. That stuff doesn't appeal that to me, but the rules themselves and the actual core book of the 3 books I thought was quite cool.
Well, I think what they kind of did wrong was what they did right when they went to Age of Sigmar. They had the General's Handbook or whatever it is, where they have all the army lists and stuff inside, were point-wise. And they could have done that with 40K instead of having 1,000 different books with these here, this here. They could have just streamlined it. Just like the rules are all the same here.
Yeah.
And you put the stuff into one big book that comes out once a year or whatever.
Right. So that's what's on the agenda for yourself. Curtis, you had said something about you're playing the ship game now or gearing up to play it, right? The new one from Warlord, or is it a different one?
Black Seas.
Yeah.
I'm considering it. The issue that's holding me back is the scale, 1/700. And I've done some research on this scale, and there really is no other companies making that scale of wooden ships era models, except maybe one in the UK, Meridian or whatever they're called. And of course, people that do 3D printing, you can buy the plans to print them out yourself. That's about it. And that's a big hold off for me.
Yeah.
So I haven't committed to it because of that reason. The game looks fun. I'd probably use other rules, more detailed, but the scale looks beautiful. It looks perfect. I mean, like the HMS Victory, it's a pretty big ship. I think it comes to about little over 4 inches.
Okay.
Yeah.
In length. That's a perfect size for the type of battles I would like to recreate on my tabletop. And it's fantastic, but it's always chancy when you got to depend on one company as your source for miniatures.
Yeah.
You said it's what, 1/700 or 600?
1/700.
1/700. Firelock Games has their small game system coming out. They did their Kickstarter, and that should be hitting them the shelves probably in March or April, somewhere in there. I'm not sure what their scale is.
What is it, a wooden ship, Sarah?
Yeah. It's taking their it's the Blood and Plunder stuff. But it's going down into something that's smaller. So it's their fleet scale game system to go with it.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah.
Osterworth had mentioned, he goes, computer games that he played in the 90s, he still has installed on his PC, but he doesn't have any of his board games from them. But that said, on average, he agrees board games last longer. And he says, have you looked at Oak and Iron as an option for playing sailing games?
Oak and Iron.
Oak and Iron. Is that the Firelock Games one. Oak and Iron.
It sounds like it, actually, because
I
I
think that's what
was
it
keeping
is.
my eye on it, and I saw that something come up from Parallax Games. It sounds like it. That's fairly recent, right? In the last...
Yeah, they went. They had to. I think the Kickstarter was back in January. Be one of the things to look up.
Mm-hmm. One of the things...
yes. All right. So it is the Firelock Games one.
Yeah, it says, and he, yeah, Usher will confirm that. One of the things we were going to do before we go to our main topic this evening, too, is we were going to talk about the Musty Wargamer project. We do, or the Old Hammer Challenge. We do this usually twice a year, is what it seems to be. And generally, the Old Hammer Challenge is that you just kind of want to get something that's basically old. You know, you're not looking at miniatures from the last 10 years. It doesn't have to be from the 80s or the early 90s, but if you can kind of, you know, stick with stuff that's kind of your older aesthetics, you know, that's kind of what we tend to do this for. But we're not too restrictive. You know, historical, fantasy, doesn't really matter. And so we're going to be doing another challenge. You can kind of choose whatever you like. We have a Musty Wargamers Facebook page. For those of you that don't know, you can look us up on Facebook. It's a bit convenient for people to post pictures that don't put videos up. And we're gonna probably do this, I would say, Rusty, for the month of October. We're very loose on our timelines. Like, we don't, you know, kind of hold people to a date or anything like that. And so I would say from any time now until, you know, trying to, you know, work on it for the month of October. And then if you go into November, then no big deal. Just continue to post your progress on it. And I see that Curtis is putting something up there. That looks like an old miniature.
That looks like
Let me blow you up
general
there.
on the Griffin.
Oh, look at that. Cool. Very nice. Now, you've already painted it, though.
I know.
You won't be able to do it for the challenge.
I can touch him up.
There you go. Pull him out, touch him up. Yeah, that's sweet. Very
And
nice.
I wanted to show you this Palmer. This was painted by my niece. I think she was about 15 or something when she did this. She's an artist, but she's never painted. Excuse me. She's never painted a miniature before. And I kind of gave her some books of the wood elves, and this is a wood elf dragon, if you remember back in the day. This had a rider on his back and the whole shebang. But I put it together for her, put it on a base. I gave her some advice on doing it. She got a little crazy with the colors, but I think all in all, she did a great job.
Oh, nice. Oh, sweet. Really colorful. That's cool.
Yeah, I know. Look at those.
Yeah, like she went wild with it. Yeah, that is cool. Nice. But I like the how she used the green and the yellow on the dragon itself, like with the two-tone, and then with all of the green like on the back and stuff. That's really cool. Oh, that's nice.
It's a beautiful model and it's huge.
Yeah.
I thought of this when I saw you posting your dragon.
Right.
Especially the face, the mouth, and all that.
Yeah, it's the same style dragon.
That older style for sure. Absolutely. That's nice.
It's kind of like the old Oriental dragons.
Yeah, the way it's all windy and stuff. It's really cool. That's the way they did it. Did them a lot then. That's nice. Cool.
I have that. I wanted to show you that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, Rusty, I think you're going to show your project on a video, right? You're going to do it on the channel. But I kind of set mine up here of what I'm hoping to attain here for the challenge. And I'm just going to switch cameras real quick. And I've got these guys here. And so basically, I've got a battalion. Well, I got 5, 10, 15, 20 with command of Bestigors. And so these are the basically the bigger. Well, they're not really bigger, but they're like the same size. But they're heavily armored with the two-handed weapons as compared to my Gors. And so this is going to be probably the longest part of my challenge is these 20. I've got a leader that is essentially a Gor that, or probably a Bestigor that's basically, a warlord, war Gor, or something to that effect. And he's got two-handed weapons. And so I've got this model, which I'll spend a little bit of time on. I really quite like this model. So I'm looking forward to painting this guy up quite a bit. And then I've got what I'm going to start with, at least for this group here, not that giant I showed. What I'm going to start with are these 6 minotaurs with two-handed weapons. And so these are kind of larger minotaurs. And so I'll be able to use this stuff for these guys I could use for Hearthguard and Saga Age of Magic. You know, I can use this guy as a warlord. These guys I can use as creatures. They're called bipeds. Anything that walks on 2 legs, kind of a creature. I can use these guys. And so there'll be plenty. 6 of them will be plenty, like more than enough for Saga. But this will be a nice, decent block, I think, for Warhammer Fantasy. Because the goal that in most of what I'm trying to do here is to use this stuff for Saga, but also to pull this back and play some old editions of Warhammer Fantasy with it as well. And so I think that, and then most likely this guy is going to blend into it. And of course, if you heard that, he's hit his club again. But, he's like, I'm not going to come out. I'm going to come out kicking and screaming if you keep pulling me out. And so I'm gonna probably try to do this guy during that time too, and try to get all this done. So this is probably the largest. Doesn't look that big compared to some of the stuff you've done, Rusty, on our challenges, but this is probably the largest grouping I've done in an Old Hammer challenge yet. But I think I could get if I can really commit, I can get it done mostly within October, I think. So yeah. So
Yeah, I would say that that should keep you busy at the rate you go through almost November.
there you go. At the rate I go.
I would say for me, that might be a week.
That's right.
It's like when you got a lot of free time.
Yeah.
You can get a lot of stuff done. You know, for me, hey, Curtis, Austin Wolf said that it's 1/600 scale for oak and iron. So there is going to be 2 systems that are going to be out there that are compatible. But I think oak and iron is the early 1700s to mid 1700s, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the ships will probably be, you could use them if they're the same scale. But for my painting challenge, I'm breaking out the Eldar again.
Cool.
So
Awesome. Space elves.
Space elves, yes. I'm going to have. I want to finish. Let's see. I have the swooping hawks. I got to work on. They were out the last painting challenge a year ago, and I was like, I just don't have enough time to work. After a while, you get tired. It's like, okay, I've painted enough Eldar. I'm moving on. I got other things I want to paint. Because I think, was it last year I was doing Eldar, and then I worked on my my coach, my black coach.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I
The undead. Yeah.
Yeah, I painted that just because I wanted to do something a little Halloweenish, but I don't know if I'll do anything like that this year or not. But
well, October. This will be right in October, for sure. But with the way you paint, you could do both. You could do a Halloween project and this one at the same time.
Yeah. So, I do have something. I do have my Chaos Dwarves.
Okay. Oh, those are cool.
It's like I got a cannon and the crew. It's the old Earthshaker cannon, where they got the Chaos Dwarves carrying the big shell. And you got one that's going, "Hey, fire!" type thing. So I have that, and see, that would be one thing that's going to get done. And I might break out a 10-man unit of Chaos Dwarves to throw something in there, a little change of pace.
Nice, awesome.
Break up the.
You guys are talking. We've been talking about this Oak and Iron and the game. What is the name of the game that you first brought up, Curtis? The one from Warlords. It's called
Black Seas.
Black Seas. Yeah. So we're talking about this stuff, and I've noticed a number of these games coming out recently, and it's funny because I love pirate ship games, and I love I played a lot of. What's the game that it's just pirates, right? Sid Meier Pirates, like the video game. Like when I was younger, I played the original. So it was like on the Commodore 64, I think, the Sid Meier's Pirates or Sid Meier's Pirates, and I played it so much, and I loved that stuff. And so I saw this stuff coming out, and I've had one of my gaming buddies that I game a lot with kind of also bring it up, and I was like, wow, that looks really good. But the thing that really made me just immediately say no to it was just because it looked awesome, and it's just that because I'm playing Star Wars Armada, a lot. And because I'm like trying to juggle all these different games that I play, I was kind of thinking that that's sort of my ship-to-ship battle game, even though it's not a Navy, like a sea-paced game. It's sort of like the strategy element is not necessarily the same, but there's some similarities, because it's that, in a lot of ways, like the space-based Navy games borrow from history, right? Like in the sea and in the actual navies, like on the ships, right? And the way, they could potentially happen. And so I've been playing so much Armada that I thought, I'd probably just stick with that right now, just because I've just got so many games that I want to get into. But it sounds really cool. I'm kind of interested in them. I don't know what the differences are between them, like the Oak and Iron versus the Black Seas. You said, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think
as far as the rules are concerned, they cover two different periods.
Mm-hmm.
When you go back to the early 1700s, you're dealing with a little bit different ship designs. For one thing, they were easy to tilt to the sides, so it wasn't as effective to have multiple gun ports because of the ship tilting. Mm-hmm. But as you get into the Napoleonic era, they were much, much more stable, and you see a lot more gun rows being applied to the ships that were effective. So there is considerable differences. Besides the aesthetic, the look of the ships themselves, that's another difference. Mm-hmm. But the big difference in rules is not the rules, but the scale of the ships. I mean, to me, I saw this scale 1/700 and said, wow, that's for me, because I love the idea of modeling a ship and putting all the rigging on, the rat lines. And up until this point, the only scale that I considered was 1/1200, which is half the size. And boy, would that be challenging to put all that detail on. And it's kept me kind of away from that genre of gaming, the wooden ships era. But Black Seas has kind of opened me up to the possibility that this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. That would look great. But it's like I said earlier, being limited to one company or have to print things out or use a different scale, like 1/600 is fairly close, but that there would be a difference noticeable with the mm-hmm. ships. So it would be touch and go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say the difference between 700 and 600, if the 600 is from the early ships, they might seem a little smaller, but if it's a different era, the ships were slightly smaller compared to like the Napoleonic eras. When it came to a lot of like a frigate was a lot larger than a lot of the ships of the line of the day back then. I just had a question. Was it Sweden that had that one multi-tiered battleship, ship of the line they had, and it rolled over? It got into some heavy seas and it just went right under on its maiden voyage because it had so many guns on it. It was top heavy.
Yeah, I don't know.
Are most of these games, you start on one side, I start on the other, you kind of come at each other, just see who wins by the end? I mean, that's kind of what Armada is. I mean, like Star Wars Armada, but it's like the typical like war game. Or are some of them doing things where it's like, well, this is a port and you got to control the port and not let them come in? Like, are there like some scenario-based aspects to it, or?
Well, I imagine Oak and Iron, from what I've seen of the Kickstarter stuff, and then some of the videos when they were talking about it, it seems to be that you could take a port, do a blockade, that scenario based if you want to, or just do meeting engagements.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So there's some options for that too.
Yeah, and I think it's mostly Spaniards, French, and British, and then you have your privateers and pirates and stuff that are tossed in there. So
I don't know much about Oak and Iron, but yeah, it's probably like that. And I know that Black Seas has a lot of scenarios, and I think really that is an essential element of this type of a game, because when you're dealing with small battles where you got maybe a half dozen ships on a side, you kind of have to have special scenarios like raiding a port or making escape, capturing the the prisoner and making an escape, or blockade runs, or fire ship attacks, and all these things. You have to have all these different kind of scenarios. It's kind of like an adventure, as opposed to a straight up ship of the line battle like Trafalgar.
Right.
You kind of have to have that, and I think Black Seas does that. And I imagine Oak and Iron would also do the same thing. You kind of need that variety to make the system work.
Right. Osterwolf says he thinks he saw escort missions in Oak and Iron, so they possibly have some of that stuff too. So that's cool. Yep. That's interesting. It makes it interesting. So
yeah, that's one of the nice things about any type of system is if you have plenty of scenarios, you can just pull. We're going to play this scenario this week, and then this one. You have a whole bunch of historical battles, and they're all written down. So after the fact, so you can just redo them again, see how. I was just watching a video the other day. Curtis, you probably know the channel. Let me see if I can bring it up. But they were talking about Trafalgar. Where's it at? It's like generals or something is in the title.
Kings and Generals?
Yes, that's it. So yeah, you know the channel.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, they were talking. They had a video just the other day talking about the battles of the leading up to Trafalgar.
Osterwolf says that you're supposed to be able to connect Oak and Iron to the Blood and Plunder games, which is the skirmish game that also has the bigger model ships and stuff, as well as have campaigns. It's supposed to be able to have a campaign system too, and be able to link to Black Powder games. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and since I have the Black Powder, or not the Black Powder, but the Blood and Plunger system, and I got a sloop. I got the big one. It's like huge. You can put 20-something, 28, 30 millimeter miniatures inside it. It's pretty big.
Jeez.
And that's the smallest of the ships.
Wow.
They actually have a frigate in the game and a galleon. It's big.
That's too big like for me.
10-foot pool table to play the game on or more.
Yeah, you definitely need a big. It's basically one of those things where they had it playing at Gen Con this last time. And it's like they have a big, massive table all squared out, and they're having a big fleet battle on top of it, using their actual big miniatures.
Well, maybe we'll maybe with that we'll introduce the main theme topic of the evening. See how much discussion this one elicits. So I'll introduce the topic, and the way we sort of worded it was winning and losing and enjoying the game. Now, in hearing that, many of you probably can get an idea what this is about, and we have a lot of veteran wargamers in our audience, and I think most of us are not new to wargaming. And I think the off-the-cuff response is always like, of course, like just enjoy the game, and like you don't like dislike it because you're losing, and like there's some basic understanding of it's not just about winning. Like I think anybody could tell you that. That's sort of like something we learn about in like sports as a kid, things like that. But what I've run into in the last number of years, and that's really surprised me, is how many veteran, seasoned, smart, and like with a lot of experience wargamers really hate to lose. And like I've met a number of people, and I'm not going to mention any games because I have some folks that watch the channel that I play games with locally, and I don't really want to single anybody out, but I've been meeting people, and it surprises me how people will so quickly disregard a game if they lose. They're so good. So Rusty's pointing to me. It's just how quickly someone will discard a game. Now, granted, it's only my opinion that I think is quite engaging, and I lose at and still really quite enjoy while I lose. But I've run into a number of situations where I was really surprised as to how people I wouldn't have thought would actually just like been so quick to see it that way and just kind of take off. Do, you know, and then I just got this impression of Vernon. I said, you know, he really doesn't like to lose. I'm starting to realize he just doesn't really like to lose, you know. And so I really thought it was something to bring up, because I really think there's more to it than it's just a matter of being experienced, you know, and things like that. And what I think would be interesting to hear from everyone and is not just the basics of the topic of, like, you know, winning and losing, you know, and your thoughts on that, but also maybe bring into it what makes you really enjoy a game and how that applies, if that makes sense. And so, I don't know, I've kind of went to you first, Curtis, before. What do you say, Rusty? Do you want to start off on this?
Me? Oh, was listening. I hate losing.
Yep.
Well, I'd say everybody likes to win a game. And pretty much when it comes to gaming, the biggest thing that can really turn people off if you constantly lose the game. It's like, you know, it's like, man, I play this game. I've been playing for weeks now, and I can't win. It's like, this game sucks. I'm just gonna sell my stuff and move on to a different one. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that one before, but you know, you get some individuals I faced that way. I got some individuals I know that are get really wrapped up around trying to win all the time. I like to win, and sometimes it's like it even gets to the point in some games where it's like, you know, it's like, hey, why don't you try doing this? And you know, they get mad at you for suggesting stuff. I'm like, okay, I was just trying to help.
Yep.
It's like I'm just like I don't want to have to constantly just win all the time, but it's to be honest with it, it's not my nature to try to throw a game. It's like I'm going to play the hardest I can to put you on your toes and make you work for it. You know,
it ruins it if you throw the game. I mean, like that.
Yeah,
that's almost an insult, right? Like when you're trying to, like, to me, like I always expect that people are playing their best. Yeah,
it's like, if you're going to play, it's like any type of competition. If you're playing a basketball, football, hockey, baseball, you know, you play to win. And now if it's just a pickup game, sure, which is our hobbies, mostly pickup games, unless you're playing a tournament or something. So go full blood sport. You know, I expect if you're playing a tournament, go full blood sport. You know, go for the jugular, take them down as quick as possible, because you want to win as quick and easy as possible.
Can you describe the last game you've had, Rusty, where you lost, but you really enjoyed the game?
The last game I lost was BattleTech at my brother's house.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where I pretty much have a 50% chance of winning when I play against my brothers.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter, sometimes it's just dice rolls. That's all that matters. It's like, well, you know, it's like, if I just made those couple rolls, that would have been the difference in the game. And one guy, or it's like, oh, geez, you got lucky. You got an ammo hit. Congratulations. You know, that really turned the tide real quick. So it's just one of those things where I expect to, when I play a game, it's like, I got a 50% chance of winning. And you go with that mentality. It's like, yep, you're going to lose games. It's like the little guys are on the table, they die, but they can get resurrected the next game. So it's like there's no reason to get all angry about it.
You do bring the miniatures back, but you don't throw them away when you're done.
Yes, I bring them back. I don't take them out. It's like,
they're dead.
Amused me.
This is what you see is what you get. They're dead once.
It's like, you lost the game for me. Your summary execution will begin now with a hammer. No, I don't do that. It's just a game. That's just, occasionally I get irritated. You know, it's like, especially if I'm playing in a group setting with other people, and it's like somebody's doing a really stupid thing, and you're like, I don't have much hair to pull, but I'm going to pull it anyway. So
go on. I can empathize with that.
So it's like that's really the worst time. It's like when you're, let's say at Gen Con or Origins, when you're playing a really big game and you got all these people that they're just, some of them are neophytes, and they're like, in our last game we had this at Gen Con, we told this kid, it's like, all right, this is how you use this mech, do it this way, and you're like, okay. It's like, don't do this or don't do that. It's like, so all right, so don't do this. And what does he automatically do? It's like, I'm gonna go do this. No, don't do that. I'm gonna do it anyway. Oh, it'll be fine. It wasn't fine.
Can you think
They
of
were like, you fool.
so
You didn't listen to the veterans. We told you not to do that, and you did it anyway. But
can you think of any other games besides BattleTech where you had a situation where you really enjoyed the game, like you enjoyed, but there was something about the game you really enjoyed, and you walked away from it kind of intrigued by the decisions you had to make, or like options, or the way you had to go with it, but you lost, but you didn't feel as if you didn't have a chance to win. And
yeah,
then,
it was
so, like, what would be an example of that?
Well, there's like Dystopian Wars is another good system I play a lot. And earlier in the game, it's like when you first started playing some of the different fleets, it was times it's like, man, that didn't work out so great. It's like, why didn't that work out so great? I liked how that was working. The plan seemed to be fine, and then it just blew up in my face.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, and I go back and I might spend a couple days just pondering. It's like, I'll go for a walk. It's like, why did that work? Why didn't that work? And the plan comes, aha, now I know what I got to do. It's like, I don't let it get me down. It's like I lost. Every time you lose a game, that's a learning experience. It's like, what can I do differently to change it around to make it better? And too many people get wrapped around it. They don't self-analyze the game system or figure out what kind of corners they have, what's the hurdles, pitfalls, strengths and weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that just don't do any type of analysis at all, and they just, I'm going to still throw dice and like, well, that didn't work. This game sucks. Okay, you played how many games now, and now you think the game sucks. It doesn't really suck, but it's just a matter of figuring out. It's just like any type of if you watch football, American football, and you look at it, it's like they don't win every game,
right?
But they go back and it's like, all right, Monday morning, we're going to we're going to watch lots of film and figure out what kind of bonehead things we were doing, and it's like we're going to work on the principles, but because you don't get it yet, so type of thing.
So Curtis, what do you think? As far as what are your thoughts on this from your perspective, in the sense of winning and losing, the basics of, of that, as well as, just playing different opponents and just maybe even yourself. I'm just going to make the assumption that maybe you would not consider yourself someone that would immediately discard a game if you lost, but some people, I can't speak for you. Maybe that's not true. But from your perspective, what do you think about this topic and your experiences with gamers, both experienced and novice gamers, and just and your thoughts about this?
Well, I've played a lot of different gamers, and I've seen a lot of different ways people play and approach games competitively, narratively, solo gaming. I've seen a lot, and I've had personal experiences where I come into a game, I have certain expectations, and my opponent has certain expectations. And when there's a conflict, it hurts. It's a pretty tough thing to get through. I've played competitive players. I'm not a competitive player in the sense of, I've got to win. It's, this is a game of skill and strategy, and it's a reflection of me and my way of thinking. I don't play that way. It's there. It's like Rusty said, we all enjoy winning and gaining a victory, But I've played really serious competitive gamers who focus on all those aspects that I don't. And when they win, they make you feel pretty bad. It's a pretty rough experience. I've had many instances with my nephew, who's a competitive gamer, where we'd be playing, great game, having a good time. Oh my God, the dice are turning against me. Things are not looking good. And boy, does he rub it in. And I've chased him around the table with a broom several times during a game. I know what that's like, but that's not me. That's not the way I play.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I've learned in my long history of gaming is that it's not about the game. It's never about the rules. It's never about the game. It's about the people gathered together around the table that make for a really good experience or a bad experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's the people. That's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can find the right people to game with, it's a great experience. It's a great time. I've played games, role-playing, board games, miniatures, and I've experienced great times and I've experienced really bad ones. And it's really about because of the people. It's not the game. It's the people that you're playing with. We all have our own way and our own expectations of what we want. I've never put a game down because I lost. If I'm playing it, it means, I expect certain things from it and I either get it or I don't, and I move on. Whether I stick with it or not is based on, whether I enjoy the game itself or the experience with the people. But
can you think of a game, and can you think of a game, like a particular instance where you walked away losing but saying, I really love that game, like that, like I lost, but oh man, like if I could have did this differently, or but I really love the decisions I had to make, and like I really loved that game.
I could think of a game that I used to play a lot of. It's a Games Workshop game. I've played them all, but one game that stood out for me the most, actually there's a bunch, but this one comes to mind first. It was a game called Man of War.
Oh yeah.
By Games Workshop. Again, there's that passion I have for the naval side of war. And I love that game. Warhammer on the high seas. Mm-hmm. Little ships, spells like Sea of Glass. Suddenly the fleet can't move. This was great stuff. I painted every single ship for like 5 different fleets. I did it all. And I collected everything I could for it. I had all the supplements. I played the game constantly. I think I only won one time.
But you obviously liked it though. Like you obviously still really enjoyed it.
Yes, and this was against my competitive nephew. But I'll tell you, it got so rough, these losses. I used to keep track of the dice rolls. How many ones did I accumulate in one battle? And they were substantial, to be honest with you. And it was frustrating as can be, but I love the game and the story behind the game and my imagination. I'd get sucked in. I loved it that much that I didn't have to win. I just thoroughly enjoyed the game. That was a great example, but that's happened in many other games too, where I've just lost repeatedly, but I love the game itself so much. Chalk it up to experience. You learn, you keep playing, you enjoy the narrative of the game more than the actual mechanics and winning.
Right.
That was one example. Man of War.
I used to play that Man of War because our group had it, and everybody had at least a fleet of it. We used to play it all the time, and then when they shut it down and got rid of it, and everybody is like, we just kind of drifted away from it. And then I don't know if I don't know if Mel still has his or not. I sold mine off.
Me
Eventually
too.
just got rid of it.
I know in the last couple of years, Idic Beer has occasionally put out a battle report for it. It's something he's picked up and put on his channel, because he's mostly 40K, right? But he'll occasionally, he played some Blood Bowl with friends and he put that up. Man of War, he'll occasionally put up on his channel. So, my thoughts, you guys had some really interesting thoughts on this. I mean, from my perspective, I tend to enjoy a game when I experience the tension of the situation with the rules and the decisions I need to make in the game. And, dice rolls are dice rolls. Like, we all can have bad days with dice rolls, and those are a little easier to chalk up, when it's sort of your decisions and like, you're where you decided to move, and then like how, you're crashing ships into other ships and because of your movement, or you're doing things, you kind of absorb it all when you play. And for me, I tend to enjoy a game that allows me lots of opportunity to make decisions that will impact the game. And it's not just orange gentlemen around necessarily, but it could be like, I think of the two games that I really like and I always go back to recently, and that's Star Wars Armada and Saga, whether it be historical or Age of Magic. They both present lots of room for strategy. They both present, like Saga has the battle board, and so how I decide to allocate resources with that, and how I decide to use fatigue on my opponent, and just then there's the basic tabletop of moving the guys around, and just how I approach that with my movement. I usually feel, and I've lost Saga lots, and I usually feel that I don't really have a game that I ever disliked with it. I've always walked away, even with my losses, and felt I really enjoyed it because it presented those moments of tension and with my decisions, and I was very engaged. Saga, the same. I mean, there were many times against one of the primary guy I played Saga with, or excuse me, Armada. The primary guy I play Armada with, I've had many times when we've played, let's say, 5 games over a number of weeks, and I've lost usually like 3 of them. Like, when I would win 2, and he would win 3, or in some cases we'd be playing 3 games and he'd win 2 and I'd win 1. But I would always walk away, and some of them were real close, like extremely close. That often happens, but I would walk away always feeling that I was so immersed in how it played out. Like, we both started to move our fleets in, and we both had this opinion of, or objective of how it was going to play out with our initial launch strategy, and then how that first touch point happens where you're right in range now, like the first moment you're in range, not short range, but just long range, and how you decide to move from there, how everything starts to launch, and how it plays out. It's fascinating to me, like, just how it ends up working. And then once you get really close and you have a major bombardment, and who ends up with what, and how you all your admirals allocated everything, whether it be shields or special, technology, whatever. In the end result, even if I lose, I generally am fascinated by the process. And so for me, that's sort of usually the dictator of whether I like the game or not. Now, usually a game like that means I felt like I had a chance. If I play a game and I feel like I never had a chance, then I generally don't like it. and sometimes with that, it comes down to balance sometimes. Like, gamers love to talk about balance. Like, we love to talk about balance when we evaluate a game. And that can be whether we're talking about symmetrical games or asymmetrical games, and the way they're designed is about, for balance. But, if I'm playing an asymmetrical game where, you have factions, and then one faction just clearly, in the end, like, it just seems like there is really no balance to the game, then it's probably not a game that I'm ever going to really last with. It's in the end, like, I hope to try to avoid those games early on. I've kind of gravitated away from a lot of that. I need a basic level. I don't expect perfect balance, but I need a basic level, to be able to play it. So yeah, I mean, once I've kind of settled in to these, I usually, in my opinion, I'm usually engaged for a number of reasons, and the winning and losing really doesn't really play a big part of it. And in many cases, I can win a game and it can be kind of ho-hum compared to a game that I lost that was close, that was amazing. Sometimes I played games where I've actually lost pretty badly and just said, well, that was a learning experience. Like I saw how badly I did and how I made some key decisions that didn't work well, where my opponent did much better with this scenario, the way they did it. But then, like, I almost in my head justify how good a game it is because I lost. I'm like, I need to do something here. Like, this is really good. I want to play it again. And it's almost a draw in that way, if you think about it that way. And so, as a part 2 to this, and I don't know if you guys can answer this, maybe this is really reaching deep into this topic, but why is it that an experienced gamer could fit this prototype of a person that can't play games, that won't play a game that they don't win within the first 2, let's say? In your opinion, because I don't believe, and maybe you can also start off and just even determine whether you agree, but I don't believe that the differentiator here is necessarily maturity or experience. I think that mature, experienced people, in my experience, could still be people that won't play games that they lose. And so, Rusty, or actually Curtis, I'll continue with this since you just talked. Let me see. Rusty, what do you think?
Well, I think the big thing is you take when you do play, a good player will always take advantage. I was just thinking of, let's go back to, it's like you got a game that's just it's going tits up. You're just like, it's losing. And it's like my normal way of playing is out the door. I'm going to throw something totally different, do it a different way just to see what happens. Take advantage of your loss. It's like you get into a certain part of the game. It used to happen sometimes, like playing a 40K game. It's like, well, that's gone south. I'm just going to, I normally don't charge and go melee. I'm charging melee just to see what happens. It's like the game's lost. Just do something, right? Instead of bemoaning your fate. And it's like, I won. How the heck? It's like, just because you went out of your comfort zone. But, that happens sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of it is you get some individuals that will refuse to, it's like, I don't like losing at all. I'm the type of person that has to win every single game. And I'm not great at this game, so I'm not going to play it.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think it is that? Why do you think some people are built that way? Like, what do you think? Is it about what the game means to them?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's face. Some individuals, it's so much about saving face that they don't like to lose. They don't want to be known as I never lose. Well, everybody loses. It happens. It's like you can't win them all, and it's like, if you got a good win record, that's 60% win record. That's pretty good if you're playing games, or maybe even 70. But you do lose some because just circumstances, or else you're trying something totally different. I'm going to try a different style of play this time just to make it different on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And you get your ass handed to you. So, but it's like, well, you have to go back and figure out, like, all right, I tried something different. Is there a way I can try that different way in a slightly more different way? It's like, can I tweak it? But too many people I think they just get into that mindset. I think a lot of it's like you get those tournament players,
Mm-hmm.
that type of individual that they find a game that they're really good at. They're so focused on it, they refuse to do something else because there's a risk that I'm not good at it.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think,
all the
Curtis?
sense in the world.
Curtis, what are your thoughts as far as why people can hate to lose that much, and like what do you think that mature, experienced people could also be people that won't play games that they don't win like pretty quick early on? What do you think the reason is, if so, that people could be built that way?
That is a deep question, and I think it comes down to just the personality of the people involved. I mean, some people, a game to them is more like an extension of their own personality. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot, they invest more of their reputation than other people would. Most of us, I think, are more casual, but we still love the history or the background to a game enough to keep at it and enjoy it for different reasons. But there are people, I know people personally, they play Flames of War specifically for the competition, for the opportunity to win tournaments and be good at it. And it's kind of an alien way for me to look at playing these games that I've been around since the 80s. It's like, how do you do that? And I don't know. I think the way games have developed over the years with being commercialized and promoting through tournaments, I think it's attracting a lot of people who are that mindset and play competitively and play for that reason exclusively even. I think it's just the nature of some people, and they play for different reasons. And we encounter them more often, these competitive types who have nothing invested into the background. They'll paint their army. they'll learn about it a little bit about the history. They might quote you something, but for the most part, they're playing to win. They're playing to build an unbeatable list and win some tournaments. And some of these people are still nice people, but every once in a while, there's a guy who's a bad egg and he hates to lose. He complains and moans and so on and so forth. I think it's just the nature of the person.
Mm-hmm.
And as time has gone on, we're encountering more of that type of person because that's our hobby these days. You know, there's room for people of that ilk, that style of play.
Yeah.
Which brings an interesting question I have, which you probably could answer, Curtis, in a way, since you're around that same type of, is the way the games have changed in the last 20 years. Before, you think about how much historical games, you didn't have competitive historical games that were tournament style games. There were scenario based type games where the narrative was the driving force of it. It's like, we're going to redo this battle, you know, or it's like this Napoleonic battle is like, we're doing Leipzig. Okay. Both sides want to just go through the steps and see if they can change the battle, if the outcome's going to be the same, or let's say the Battle of the Bulge or whatever it may be. Is that nowadays we have more competitive style games that are tournament style games, and we're seeing a different type of player that comes out due to that, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think back in the 70s, this is before I was really in the hobby, but I remember back in the day there was tournament gaming, and it was Ancients. Ancients was the tournament thing. That's where tournament games really grew from. How they did it with Ancients, with army lists, and and so on and so forth. Today, you see competitive gaming and competition games with World War II. To be competitive in the market today, a set of rules usually has to have a point system.
Yep.
It's usually thrown in there like it did with Black Powder. There's usually army lists somewhere because commercially it makes the rules more viable. So there's many reasons for that, but yeah, we see it more, this competitive and tournament stuff nowadays than we used to back in the day. Like Napoleonic's a competitive game. Yeah. Tournament for Napoleonics? Who does that? There are some. I'm thinking of Napoleon at War, I think, had a very similar approach to its rules as Flames of War did, with lists and points, and there was some competitive play, and you're seeing it more and more, but it's strange to me. And I think it's because of the way our hobby is being commercialized. You've got to invite more in, and point systems and lists and tournaments help do that. They help commercialize the product.
We've got a couple of comments here. Walkabout Game says, I like good stories made by the games I play. And I would agree with that. I think that's another whole part of this, and that if, depending on how imaginative you are as a person, you can really, because we all are trying to leverage our imagination when we're playing this stuff, but you can like kind of see this stuff unfolding, and if it happens randomly and you just see something happen and kind of then imagine it kind of in your mind, like how it's actually going on, makes it more exciting and stuff. And I totally agree with that. Then Eric says, I agree, Curtis, competitive players and rules lawyers. My thought on the person type is that I do agree that if you're from a competitive mindset, then it immediately kind of can put you into that category where you're there really to compete. It is all about winning and losing, and that's really what you're there for. I don't necessarily knock somebody for like wanting to go to tournaments and to be that kind of person, as long as that's the sort of, I guess, the standard, that everybody's there for. But at the same time, if that's what you're both agreeing to and like what you're there for, but at the same time in sort of casual games, you still have that competitive mindset, as you guys are kind of saying, can creep in. The thing that I would say and the way you've been talking about personality, Curtis, you mentioned personality. The way I kind of agree with that comment that you said, that it's about the person's personality and what it means to them, or what they've invested into it, or what they're taking away from it. I think that non-competitive people can still get together for casual games, and for them, maybe playing that game for them is like that they've had a rough week at work and this is their outlet, and this is the thing they're expending their energy into, and losing for some people in that situation is harder to enjoy that moment. When like that's what they're trying, like that like they're basically getting together, but they're either frustrated or something, and they're trying something new. I think for some people it means more. Like there's this, what I would characterize it at is that some people are being validated by how it turns out, like in their head, where others are getting disvalidated by the loss. Like in some ways they're almost taking it as like some sort of negative to the validation, that makes sense.
Yep.
And so I don't know, that was my perception, because I've experienced it a couple of times, and I kind of just asked myself about it, just because I thought, like, I really see, I mean, granted, everybody has an opinion on a game. Like, not everybody can agree that it's a good game. Like, for different reasons, people could dislike it. But when I see this one game that I think has just so much potential, and like, even when I lose, I really enjoy it, then I can see someone else in the equal situation just sort of discard it, like when, in the loss. And so I was running into that, and I thought it's an interesting subject from that perspective, because I do think that it's something you can run into even with experienced folk that have been gaming for many, many, many years. I don't know.
It's a good topic. It's a deep topic. You can go on all night with this.
It's kind of like a psychology thing almost, right?
It's definitely psychology.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, the more popular this hobby becomes, like I said, more commercialized, and it's going to bring more people in. You're going to encounter more different types of personalities. And yeah.
You think about how many people do play games now, miniature games, compared to before, in the style of games. You're getting more. It's like you look at age. The Games Workshop is, I think, the gateway drug for our hobby. Seems to be lately.
Yep.
And you get a lot of people who play 40K, they play Age of Sigmar, and then I think the next step is they start looking at historicals, and it's either, nowadays it seems to be Flames of War, Bolt Action is the two progressions that into it. And then it just kind of trickles out into a larger pool of little trickles, inlets of streams, and where you find your niche. I think it is. It's like Curtis. I agree with you. It's like, I love a good naval game. It's like most of the games that we seem to play used to play a lot of. It was like Dystopian Wars and Uncharted Seas. Yep. And then Firestorm Armada, those were, and then you play, we had some, I had X-Wing, and you were just talking about it.
Star Wars Armada?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just got rid of mine, so I was like, it wasn't getting used, so I was like, I turned it into some other miniatures, so I converted it.
Yeah, let me mention something a little bit off topic, but I'm thinking about getting into, because this is a lot of nostalgia for me, and I'm all about nostalgia these days, as people know. Starfleet Battles.
Oh yes,
like
I used to love that game back in the day. Yeah, Starfleet Battles.
Yeah,
Starfleet Battles.
I played that in high school.
Huh?
We used to play that in high school all the time.
Yeah, you did. I can believe it. That's been around a long time.
During our what I call it,
hello,
study hall.
I forgot to take the phone out of the room. That's my fault. It's gone. It goes after the fourth ring. Sorry.
Yeah, so it was like during our study hall. It was like our friends. There was like 4 of us. Every study hall was like, oh, anybody got any homework? So like when friend Wayne would break out at the Starfleet Battles box, he'd put out the map, and if we had the numbers, all the numbers were on the hexes. Yep. It was all right. Where was your ship? It was like, here, clunk, clunk. We put everything out, pull the sheets out. It was all right. Continue on. It's like we'd have play an entire week, for like 40 minutes a day for 5 days. You just keep playing, and you just like, So what if we didn't have to worry about doing anything? We just break it out and play. I love that game.
That's a great game. It's detailed.
And you got all the
great.
captain's logs. It's like they just kept getting bigger. It's like you got a binder that just gets fixed full of all the ships.
Yeah.
It just kept growing.
Doug
The
Noble.
rules kept growing. It's like,
Yep.
this is getting unbearable.
Attack of the Giant Space Amoeba.
Yes.
Doug Noble says, "Well said." The A personalities, A-type personalities. But with your Starfleet battles, pretty, you're taking a battle tech again, Curtis, or dipping your toe in it, and then Starfleet battles you're talking about. It makes me think that you like you said, you are getting nostalgic. You're pulling out some of this retro gaming.
You want to hear something else?
Yeah.
I'm serious about this nostalgia thing because I've been in this hobby for longer than I would want to. And my greatest, fondest memories are from back in the 80s. And when I was first into it, there was a mystique about it that we don't have today.
Mm-hmm.
And the more and more I get on with this hobby, I'm more drawn to the old mystique.
Yeah.
And I find myself drawn to things like Battletech, Starfleet battles. One of the reasons I enjoy Pathfinder is because it's just like D&D 3rd edition, which is going way back to the early 2000. And that was when I really was playing D&D. That was my fondest memories. And to me, that's old school. Even though I played before that, it wasn't until 3rd edition that I got deep into it. Mm-hmm. And Pathfinder is based on that edition.
Well, that's
there's something else. There's something else. And I haven't shared this with anybody. And anybody that follows my channel.
Exclusive. Do we have the button, Rusty? Hit it. The exclusive. Dash of Elon exclusive right here on Musty Gamers.
You heard it here.
Curtis is like, forget it. I'm not doing it now.
I don't know about this.
Okay. Okay, so what is it?
Everybody that knows me knows I'm a big fan of Napoleonics and General de Brigade, General d'Armée, and all that good stuff. I've played so many Napoleonic rules. Napoleonics are part of my hobby life. It's a big interest of mine, historically and game-wise. And again, that's because of nostalgia. Well, my first experience was with a set of rules called Empire. I think back then it was Empire 3. Mm-hmm. And this is old school. And I just recently made the decision, because of a friend of mine, to put my focus back into Empire with the current edition, which is called Revolution and Empire. And anyone that has experienced that set of rules knows that this is probably one of the most detailed set of rules out there that's more focused on the simulation as opposed to the game. It's not for everybody. But I have since decided, you know what, General de Brigade, I love you. I love everything about you. But I think I'm going to move over back to Empire.
So it's miniatures?
Miniatures.
Oh, it is miniatures.
And I've never shared this with anybody, and I'm kind of hesitant. And I don't feel good about it at the moment because a lot of people see me as the General de Brigade guy.
There's room for both, aren't there?
Well, basing is totally different. One's a 1 to 20 scale. The other one's 1 to 60 scale. So it's a whole different way of basing. Units are much smaller. But
15s?
15s. That's one of the reasons I enjoy 15 millimeter.
Magnets.
Because of that. I don't know about magnets, but but that's what I think I'm going to go toward, and I'm going to post videos on that. But
cool. That's awesome.
What exactly that means?
You're just going to have to build another army. You
I
have
know.
one for the other one. You got to. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is, Curtis. You're just going to have to do it. You got to do it. Do it.
Yeah, that's about the amount of it.
There is nostalgia is like a really, I mean, we're not talking nostalgia as the main topic tonight, but it's kind of, as we mentioned, it's kind of a broad thing because you can be nostalgic in the way you paint your miniatures, like in the way you like play a game. Like I could put like Goblin Green on all my old fantasy bases and like kind of come up like with some old fantasy armies and like, I can do some nostalgia, like with the way I'm painting it and
paint everything with red.
Yeah, right, exactly. Really bright red, Yeah. But like sometimes when I pull out some old books, whether it be, AD&D battle systems, which is one that I'm going to be doing like as a nostalgic project, or whether it be pulling out like Warhammer 3rd edition fantasy, which is around the Rogue Trader days, so like late 80s. You can look through the font and the print of the old books, which looks different, and it's kind of nostalgic when you read it as compared to some of the stuff you go through today. And you have whole pages of pictures now that are beautiful, like on one page, but maybe a lot less, like on like the rules, let's say, in some cases, or even just like the clunkiness, as you said, like the amount of time and the depth and the detail you go in. You might say, well, nobody's going to want to come down and play this for 4 hours because we're not going to be able to get anything done. But then you could say, well, I don't care. I'll just set it up for 2 months in my basement room, and like I'll go through it over time and see how it all plays out. Like, and or even just have like I'll play with a friend a whole day, and we'll do it every couple of months and just keep playing the same game, or continue it or whatever. But it's just a different feeling. But it's kind of neat. Like, yeah, like that whole. I don't know. I think maybe it's an age thing too, but you just kind of, at one point, you kind of look back and you're just kind of like, what was
the good old days?
Joy. What is it that I used to enjoy about this? That you grab another book and you're like, oh my gosh, I love that print.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. It's like every once in a while we'll break out the old AD&D, first edition AD&D, and that's where. I started playing back in 79, 80. So, when we started playing the actual, I think it was around there. And we played that until then the second edition came out, and we were like, well, let's try that. No, we don't like this. We went right back to playing the old AD&D. We played AD&D until 3rd edition came out.
Did you play 3rd edition?
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved it.
We used to play 3rd edition all the time. Right here in the house. Yeah. So, and even my son, who used to, we play all the time. And when he went to Navy, he took 3rd edition with him, and then he got into 4th, and then now he's into 5th. So, but every once in a while they'll ask me to be a game master, and we'll break out the old style. We're going old style.
Yeah, my God. I was looking, you remember the box sets, the red box, the blue box, and I was looking at the rules for the basic set, the red box. I was looking through it and I read through it, and it took me about 15 minutes and I had the game mastered in my head. But it was such a different game compared to what it is today. So simple. There was no skills. You just made an ability check if you wanted to jump into a haystack. That's all it was. But it was deadly. It was incredibly deadly. Some of the spells and monsters in there, level drain, it's just instant death. Different experience, different world from what it is today.
Yeah, it was one of those things that it was just so easy to play. Mm-hmm. It wasn't cluttered, I don't think. It seemed like there was more towards the imagination. You have to constantly take a skill check, take a skill check, take a skill check. Mm-hmm. Didn't have to worry about that. I'm going to go do this. You sure you want to do that? Go ahead. I'll be. Oh, sorry, but the dragon noticed you. Oh,
yeah. 10th level character is now dead. Just like that,
Yeah.
I've got a bit of a D&D plug, but I don't know, because I used to play D&D back in the day, and Pete at Mini Wargaming had recommended a book. It actually seems like it's been a couple of years since he recommended it, but I went out and bought it, and I loved it. And for anybody that grew up playing D&D, have you guys read The Elvis Gene? Have you guys read this? So it was written by somebody, and they kind of talked about growing up during that era and just how it affected them as a person. And it's a bit of a comedy as well as serious note. And it's just about somebody's life, being immersed in D&D and it being really important to them through grade school up into college, and then how they turned out as an adult, and looking back at it and all this stuff. And a lot of it's really funny. A lot of it's actually when they were kids. A lot of it is a guy growing up in a geek culture, right? In some of the nerd rage and some of the stuff we dealt with as kids, all the things we're talking about. But the Elvis Gene, it's I actually pulled it up here because you just kind of reminded me of it when we were talking. It's by Mark Barrowcliff, and it's a really enjoyable read if you guys kind of would like to get some nostalgia and with a bit of humor thrown in.
Yeah, send me that. information after the show.
Yeah.
The Elvis gene, do a Bing or a Google search, and I'm sure it'll pop up.
The Elvis gene. It's pretty. Yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty fine. But
you guys watch Stranger Things?
Oh yeah. Yep.
It's like Stranger Things. I was like that. The little group of guys, they're playing D&D. That would have been us in the 70s.
Yeah.
That was us when we were
That
playing
was, the old.
We started off with the old box, the old red box. That was the blue box, red box. That was us in the 70s.
See, that was me in the early 80s. I was the same age as those kids on that show. I was the exact age as them in the basement playing that game. And so for me, it was early to mid 80s that I was at that age playing just like them. And I love that show. I watched that show with my kids, and my wife's not that into it. I can kind of understand it, because it's like not everybody likes watching a show that has a huge, not a lot of adults like watching a show that has a huge component that focuses around kids, but I've always liked that show. I watch it with my kids, and I can identify with those kids because I was like their age doing that when I was that age. And then also there's a lot of adults on the show too, right? So but it's been great. I love the third season.
My kids were the same way. We used to watch it too. It's like even my daughter is like, Stranger Things on. All right, gotta watch it.
We all watch it together. We absolutely do not watch it separately. And as a matter of fact, we don't. This is the way I kind of am with anything, but I don't like to go multiple episodes in the same day. I like to watch an episode and then think about it and then come back to the next one. And so that's the way we do it. We will watch one in a day and then we'll come back together and watch the next one.
See, Stranger Things takes place in 85?
I thought it was 82 to 85 in that area. Yeah, they throw up the dates, but it's right in that area. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, see, I graduated high school in 83, so
wow.
I would have been the adult, older kids in the show.
You've been the older kids in the show.
Yeah.
Some people speculate that actually it's based on an area in Long Island called Montauk Point, which is the farthest point on Long Island in New York, because there's apparently a military base that was there that was very mysterious, and Stranger Things has a research complex there. And so there's some parallels to that area of Long Island and the thought that it might have inspired the show a bit, and some controversy with that. I actually grew up on Long Island, so I'm not that familiar with the Montauk Point, because that was actually pretty far from where I lived, but it was kind of interesting to hear that too.
So it's kind of a nostalgia. The show in itself is just like, the music, everything is going on. I lived that. So that's, to me, that was just yesterday. So
season 3, because it had such a big part that had to do with a shopping mall.
Oh yeah.
Totally.
We're going to the mall.
It was all about fashion from the 80s. You could see all of it coming in. And because my kids asked me, so Dad, which one do you think, by the way, Dan Booman just jumped on. Hey, Dan.
Hey.
So my kids asked me, which one do you think is which season the most retro for the 80s? And I said, well, probably season 3, because it took place at a mall. And it's all about everything that's happening in pop culture. It shows up at the mall. Right. And so, but I really enjoyed it. It's a great.
Yeah. We had our town, we had up north, our mall was not very big. It was really dinky, but we did have a game store in it, so that was a good thing.
That's a bonus.
Yeah. And then when we moved to Iowa, that we actually had a big giant mall like that where you could walk down and everything. Mm-hmm. And we had to go to a totally different city to get to the game shop. So it was actually, all right, we're going to make a road trip. We're going to Iowa City to get some game stuff. So,
what kind of games?
You have a game store in your town?
Huh?
You have a game store in your town growing up?
Nah, we had an arcade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's about it.
All right, we had a comic book store that had some gaming stuff. And so that they kind of had that dual purpose. So
I think in the 90s, we had a couple comic stores that had role-playing games, Games Workshop stuff. There was a hobby store around the same time. In the 90s, I think it would be the earliest.
Yeah. We had the town I grew up in Iowa. I moved to. All we had was KB toys,
Mm-hmm.
and they had nothing but board games.
Yeah,
Along with all the toys. So all the Avalon Hill stuff you could want. They had a whole shelf full of Avalon Hill stuff.
Yeah.
So
Thinking about it now, Rusty, that I remember that in the mall, there was a toy store. It was KB, or I think it was known as Kids back in the 70s. But I remember, and I was really young, but I remember going down that one aisle that was for the older kids, and they had Squad Leader. What is this? Because I loved history even back then, and that looks cool, but it looks way above me. There was that, and there was also a bookstore, Paperback Booksmith, I think it was called, and they had AD&D first edition books in there. So this is going way back. So I did have that. I remember.
Yeah, we had B. Dalton's bookstores, and that was where we got all of our D&D stuff. Was from those guys. And then the KB toys, we got where all the board games came from. And then we actually had in Minnesota, this is in Bemidji, we actually had a toy store or game shop that had comics and all kinds of historical stuff that was everywhere. That's where I first started getting into historicals. And then they had the old Rao Partha stuff that was everywhere. And it's like, wow. We could actually get miniatures for our D&D game. All right.
Yeah.
That one's me.
Like that was like that little box. That's got a wizard in there. I'm buying the box. We'll get the box and I'll have the wizard.
Right.
And didn't know that you could paint this stuff at the time, but everything was just blank lead. But
yeah. Well, then
we're talking lead here too. Lead.
Yes,
right.
Lead. I didn't see it.
The same miniatures with. Go ahead.
I think it was 93 before I seen a pewter miniature.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they federally mandated, you must have pewter miniatures now. I'm like, really? Thank you, New York. Thank you.
Then they had the same miniatures where they sold them in the rock t-shirt shops with the little crystals on them and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they kind of had the same ones. Like I have a Drizzt Do'Urden from Grenader that people used like for D&D, but I actually have it brushed, polished a little nicer, I guess, and like with these like crystals on the scabbard, and like it's something that I got just like in a glass cabinet, like where next to like the Iron Maiden t-shirts,
Yeah. You had a shop with Iron Maiden t-shirts? I just went to the concert and got those. The benefits of being an adult in the 80s too.
Yeah, that's true, I suppose. They had shops with all the t-shirts. And lava lamps and everything you wanted to buy.
Oh yeah, 70s, man. Lava lamps.
Well, I think we've moved on a bit from what was the topic again tonight?
Type A personality word game.
That's right, winning and losing and enjoying the game. I thought it was a pretty cool discussion. It was kind of interesting. It's a bit reflective. I mean, in the sense that I think sometimes the assumption is that it's either an immature personality or really competitive personality that's going to feel that way. But I think it's a bit more complicated than that. And I think some interesting points. I kind of like the points that people made too about bringing it around to the narrative component, because I think the way you see the game and how, if you have two people that, in closing, for me, I'd say if you have two people that actually both see the game from a narrative perspective, and the dice and how you kind of maneuver it in there is just really how you get there, then you both kind of enjoy seeing how that played out, regardless of who wins, in some ways. You can kind of both kind of just see how it ended up working out, and regardless of who brought those miniatures that day to the table, it doesn't really matter. So from my perspective, but no, it's been fun chatting, guys. I think we're kind of a little bit past our point that we usually stop the show. We're usually about now. So probably end up going, calling it quits for the day and looking forward to our next one. Curtis, thanks for joining us this evening.
No problem, Palmer.
It was a lot of fun.
Back to your basing.
You're welcome to come back in the future. Enjoy having you on.
Well, thanks, Palmer.
Anytime you can come back.
We'll see what happens. I am a member in your Facebook community, so
yes,
absolutely. Everybody that's interested in putting up pictures for their any sort of challenge that you join, or even just putting pictures up of stuff that you just do any time of the year, because we put pictures up all the time, you're welcome to join us on Facebook, the Musty Wargamers.
Yep. Yeah, if you just want to join us, put a request in. Palmer and I will okay you eventually when we see it, usually sometime during the day.
Got to be properly vetted.
Yeah.
And if you have old miniatures and you want to join us, we are doing one, as we said earlier, in October. So you can start anytime from now through October and start posting pictures up, and it'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Old Hammer miniatures.
And let's see, today is what, the 26th? 20.
Yep.
Yeah. So in 2 weeks from today will be
10th.
10th. All right.
10th of October.
Okay, that will be when our next show will be, right?
Most likely, yep.
Okay, that'll be on my channel.
That's right. We usually always flip as usual.
Yep. So
What do you
I'll
do
have
them every 2 weeks?
yes.
We try to, yeah. We don't do them over the summers usually. We usually take July off, but we do them like every 2 weeks. Yeah.
So, yeah, sometime in it, it's every 2 weeks, and then unless something big happens or some type of event prevents us, that we'll have to schedule to move it to the next week or something like that, or life gets in the way.
We've had a lot of topics, even with having them every 2 weeks in 3 seasons. We've had a lot of topics now.
Yeah, it's like, and then when we had a third person in here, it actually having a second topic really sometimes isn't necessary. So because we get off on tangents, like tonight, we got off into so many tangents that, but we still come back to the same topic. So
they're great topics. I mean, I know personally I could go on and on about some of these discussions, the psychology stuff and nostalgia. Oh, don't get me started, Palmer. You made a mistake there. I could go on and on about stuff like that. That's great stuff.
All right.
Awesome. We'll see you next time, everybody, and thanks for everybody for joining us tonight.
Thanks for stopping in, everybody.
Take care.
Take care, folks.